This story was shared by a man named Kevin. He says it happened about 3 years ago while he was driving home late at night. Even today, he refuses to drive on that road after midnight. Kevin worked the night shift at a warehouse outside a small town in Texas. His shift usually ended around 2 in the morning. One night after work, he got into his car and started driving home like he did every night. The road he took was a long two-lane highway surrounded by trees. There were very few streetlights, and at that hour almost no other cars on the road. For the first 10 minutes, everything felt completely normal. Kevin had music, playing quietly, while he drove through the darkness. Then he noticed something strange. In his rearview mirror, he saw headlights behind him. At first, he didn't think much about it. Cars sometimes passed through that road late at night. But after a few minutes, he realized something wasn't right. The car behind him wasn't passing. It was staying the exact same distance behind him. Even when Kevin slowed down slightly, the other car slowed down too. After about 5 minutes, Kevin started feeling uncomfortable. So he decided to test something. He changed lanes. Immediately, the car behind him changed lanes too. Now Kevin knew something was wrong. He pressed the gas and sped up to about 65 miles per hour. But the car behind him stayed right there. The headlights were so bright that they filled his mirrors with light. Then suddenly, the car behind him turned on its high beams. Kevin could barely see the road. The bright light filled the inside of his car. And then the driver started flashing the headlights over and over again. Kevin had no idea what the driver wanted. For a moment he thought the person might be angry, or maybe trying to force him to stop. But Kevin decided he wouldn't stop on that dark highway. Instead, he kept driving. A few minutes later, he finally saw something ahead. A small gas station near the highway. The lights were still on. Relieved, Kevin quickly turned into the parking lot. The car behind him followed. Kevin parked under the brightest lights near the entrance. The other car stopped behind him. A tall man jumped out of the car and ran toward Kevin's window. Kevin immediately locked his doors. The man started knocking loudly on the glass and shouted, "Open the door!" Kevin shook his head. He didn't know this person. Then the man shouted something that completely confused him. "I'm trying to help you." Kevin slowly lowered the window just a little and asked what he meant. The man pointed toward the back seat of Kevin's car and said something Kevin will never forget. "Someone climbed into your back seat at the last stop sign." Kevin felt his stomach drop. Slowly, very slowly. He turned his head to look behind him. At first, he didn't see anything. The back seat looked completely empty. Kevin was about to say something when suddenly the seat cushion behind him slowly pressed down, as if someone invisible had just shifted their weight. Kevin immediately jumped out of the car and ran into the gas station. The police were called right away. They searched Kevin's car carefully, but they found no one inside. To this day, Kevin still doesn't know what was in his car that night. But sometimes when he drives alone, late at night, he avoids looking into the rearview mirror, because he's afraid that one day he might see someone sitting in the back seat again. Driving late at night usually doesn't bother me. I actually like it. The roads are quiet, there's almost no traffic, and it feels peaceful. But one night last year changed the way I feel about empty roads forever. Because sometimes, when the road is empty, you might not actually be alone. This happened to me in October of last year. I was driving back home from my friend's house in a nearby town. It was already pretty late, around 1:15 in the morning. The drive usually takes about 40 minutes, mostly through long country roads surrounded by trees. I had taken that route hundreds of times before. Nothing strange had ever happened there. About 10 minutes into the drive, I noticed a car behind me. At first, that wasn't unusual, Even late at night, you occasionally see another car on the road. But something about this one caught my attention. The headlights were extremely bright, so bright that they filled my entire rearview mirror. I adjusted my mirror slightly to avoid the glare. The car stayed about 2 car lengths behind me. Again, nothing too strange. But after about 5 minutes, I realized something odd. The car never changed its distance. Not even a little. Every time I sped up slightly, the car sped up. Every time I slowed down, the car slowed down. It was like the driver was perfectly matching my speed. At that point, I told myself I was probably overthinking it. Maybe they were just going the same direction. Still, something about it made me uncomfortable. The road eventually turned into a long stretch of forest. There were no houses, no streetlights, just trees and darkness. I looked in the rearview mirror again. The headlights were still right behind me. Then something even stranger happened. The car turned off its headlights, completely. For a moment I thought the car had turned somewhere else. But then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. I could still see the shape of the car. It was still right behind me, driving in complete darkness. At this point, my heart started racing. Why would someone turn off their headlights on a dark road? There was no logical reason for it, unless they didn't want to be seen. I slowly pressed the gas pedal and increased my speed. The dark car behind me sped up too, still with no headlights. Now I was seriously scared. The next town was about 15 minutes away, and that was the closest place with other people. I decided I needed to get there as quickly as possible, but before I could speed up again, the headlights suddenly turned back on, and they were even closer now, maybe 1 car length behind me. Then the driver flashed their high beams several times, over and over. At first I thought maybe something was wrong with my car, but then the car suddenly swerved slightly toward my lane, almost like it was trying to push me off the road. That's when I realized something was seriously wrong. I pushed the gas pedal all the way down. My car accelerated quickly down the empty road. For a few seconds, the other car stayed behind me. Then it sped up too. Now it was chasing me. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I kept checking the mirror. The headlights were bouncing wildly as the driver tried to keep up. I finally saw the sign for the next town. Only 5 more minutes. I told myself if I could just reach the gas station there, I would be safe. I drove faster than I ever had before on that road. The car stayed right behind me the entire time. Then suddenly, the driver honked. Once, then again, loud and aggressive. I didn't look back anymore. I just kept driving. Finally, I reached the town limits. Streetlights appeared again. A few buildings, a closed diner, and then the gas station. It was one of those 24-hour stations with bright lights. I pulled into the parking lot as fast as I could, and the moment I did, the car behind me slowed down. It didn't pull into the station. It just stopped on the road for a few seconds. Then it slowly drove past the entrance. As it passed, I finally got a look at the driver. Or at least I tried to. But the inside of the car was completely dark. I couldn't see the driver's face at all. The car kept driving down the road until the headlights disappeared into the distance. I stayed at that gas station for almost an hour before driving home. And the entire way back, I kept checking my rearview mirror, just hoping those headlights wouldn't appear again. Most people who drive late at night have experienced something strange, at least once. Maybe it's a shadow on the side of the road, a car that follows you for too long, or someone standing somewhere they shouldn't be. The story you're about to hear happened to someone who thought they were just taking a normal drive home. But one person standing in the middle of the road changed that night forever. Story. This happened to me about 2 years ago. At the time, I was working the night shift. at a warehouse just outside a small town in Missouri. My shift ended at 2 a.m. every night. The drive home was about 35 minutes, mostly on quiet rural roads. Normally, the drive was boring. I would just listen to music and enjoy the empty roads. But one night in November, something happened that I still can't explain. That night, my shift ended a little later than usual. By the time I left the parking lot, it was already around 2:30 a.m. The temperature was cold, and a thin layer of fog covered parts of the road. About 15 minutes into the drive, I turned onto a narrow two-lane road that went through a wooded area. There were no houses around, no streetlights, just trees and darkness. I had my headlights on a high beam because the fog made it hard to see far ahead. After driving for a few minutes, I noticed something in the distance. At first, it looked like a shadow in the road. I slowed down slightly. As I got closer, I realized it was a person. Someone was standing in the middle of the road, completely still. My first thought was that maybe someone's car had broken down nearby. So I slowed the car almost to a stop. But something immediately felt wrong. The person wasn't waving for help. They weren't trying to get my attention. They were just standing there, facing my car. When I got closer, I noticed the person was a man. He was wearing dark clothes and a hooded sweatshirt. His hands were hanging loosely at his sides. I stopped my car about 20 feet away from him. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. I rolled down my window slightly and called out. "Hey, are you okay?" The man didn't respond. He didn't move. He didn't even turn his head. He was just staring at my car. That's when I felt this strange wave of anxiety. Something about the situation felt completely wrong. Normally, if someone needed help, they would talk or move, or at least react. But this man was completely silent. After about 10 seconds of silence, he slowly started walking toward my car. His steps were slow and uneven, almost like he was limping. I quickly rolled my window back up. My heart started beating faster. The man kept walking closer, 10 feet away, then 8, then 5. I noticed something strange about the way he was moving. His head was tilted slightly to one side, and his arms barely moved when he walked. It almost looked unnatural, like he wasn't used to walking. When he reached the front of my car, he stopped. For a moment, he just stood there. Then he slowly leaned forward, trying to look through the windshield. The hood of his sweatshirt covered most of his face, but I could see his mouth. And he was smiling, not a normal smile. It was wide and completely emotionless. That was the moment I knew something was seriously wrong. Before he could get any closer, I slammed the gas pedal. My car shot forward and swerved around him. As I passed him, I glanced in the side mirror. The man had turned around and was watching my car drive away. But he wasn't chasing me. He was just standing there again. In the middle of the road, exactly where I first saw him. I drove the rest of the way home as fast as I could. When I finally reached my house, I locked all the doors and looked out the window for a long time, just in case. But the road outside my house stayed empty. The next day at work, I told one of my co-workers what happened. When I mentioned the road where it happened, his expression changed. He asked me something that made my stomach drop. Was he standing in the middle of the road? I said yes. Then he told me something disturbing. A few months earlier, a man had died on that exact road after being hit by a car late at night. The driver said the man was standing in the middle of the road, not moving, not reacting, just staring at the headlights. And ever since then, some people driving that road late at night say they see someone standing there, waiting.